Relations to the agenda, and I believe we have two. One is change of town council meeting date in November, and the second one is Mariners Center. I have a motion to put those on the agenda. We'll put those under,
9A and 9B, but could we move that up to right after approval of the minutes?
okay, we'll move the change of town council meeting, we'll move that right up to after we do the minutes.
Sorry, after the agenda.
After the agenda, okay? Okay. Water, we'll put that 9C, Councillor Hood. Somebody move the agenda as circulated with the addition. So moved by Jim, seconded by Councillor Berry. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? I'd like to have a motion that we change the town council meeting date in November, and that'll fall one Thursday back, CAO?
The 16th.
I got it.
There you go. So the council meeting would normally fall on the 9th, which is the second Thursday. That is the week of the UNSM conference, and several of you are registered for that conference, and so we probably wouldn't have a quorum here. So the suggestion is that we move the council meeting back 1 week until the 16th of November. And the reason I'm asking you to make this decision at a committee of the whole meeting, which you would have to ratify at the next council meeting, is we have an advertising deadline this afternoon with the local paper around a public hearing that we're trying to get arranged. So if that's okay, a motion to change the date.
So move, Councillor McLeod?
I take a vacation once every 100 years, and it's possible that I'm going to be. Life's a vacation. Life's a vacation. So it's. I'm sure we'll have a quorum, but it's possible that I'm going to be away. I'm trying to confirm that as early as today, and as late as later on tonight. So.
You'll make that a motion, though?
I'll certainly make it a motion that we change the date of the council meeting to this Thursday, the 16th. Is that the date? Moved.
Moved by Councillor McLeod, seconded by Councillor Berry. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Presentation, we have the auditor's report. We have Gloria Banks and we have Chris Ellis. Come right up.
Is this working? Yep. Can you hear me okay? All right.
Right into it.
I have to talk right into it?
Yeah.
Oh, dear. Okay. So you have a copy of the audited financial statements in front of you. I can report that we've already met with management and gone over the statements in detail, and we've also met with your audit committee and gone through the statements as well as our report that we're required to prepare for you each year. So I'm just going to go over at a high level the financial statements, and if you have any questions, then feel free to ask. I'm going to go right directly to page 1, which is the independent auditor's report. So this is a clean audit opinion. We didn't find anything while we did our audit that would have us to limit the scope of our report or not be able to complete our audit duties. So that's what we consider to be a clean audit opinion. It's laid out in terms of responsibility. The first paragraph is the introduction. So these are the financial statements for March 31st, 2017, and they are the consolidated financial statements, which means they incorporate not just the town operations of the town, the water utility, your reserves, and your capital fund, but it also incorporates the percentage ownership that you have in each one of what we call your subsidiaries. So those are the organizations that you would control, and that would be the airport, the Solid Waste Management Authority, YASTA, the Area Industrial Commission, the Waterfront Development Corporation, and the Mariner Center. So these statements take into consideration all of those entities and your percentages of them. The first paragraph, or the second paragraph, says management's responsibility. So it is management's responsibility to make sure that throughout the year they have a system of internal control that's appropriate in the circumstances so that the financial data can be accumulated. And obviously their purpose is to try and make sure that the financial statements are free of what we call material misstatements. And they have to make sure that the financial statements are in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards, and that's the framework that all the municipalities in Nova Scotia have to follow. Our responsibilities as your auditor, at the end of the day, we need to be able to give you an opinion on these financial statements. We have to follow Canadian generally accepted auditing standards when we do our plan and when we implement our audit. Our goal, as well as management's goal, is to make sure that the statements are free of material misstatements. So we have to perform our procedures, and we do those based on the highest risk areas. We do a testing, we do samples, and we do looking at invoices, and we're looking for support and making sure that things are properly authorized. We do have to consider the internal control systems, although we don't have to give an audit opinion on your internal controls. We have to be comfortable that they're appropriate in the circumstances to be able to accumulate the financial data. We are required to look at your accounting policies to make sure they're appropriate in the circumstances, and we look at all of management's estimates to make sure that we agree with the approach that management has taken when they're developing these estimates, and that at the end of the day, the balance is appropriate. So at the top of page 2, our opinion is that the consolidated financial statements present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of the town of Yarmouth as at March 31st, 2017, and the results of its operations, changes in net financial assets, and its change in net cash flow for the year that ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that's our audit opinion. There is one other paragraph attached right after that, and it's considered another matter paragraph, and we do attach at the very back the operations of your water utility as a requirement for the UARB. They're not in the format of the public sector accounting standards, and that's why we bring them to your attention here, but they are included for information purposes for the UARB. And they are dated today, October 5th, which is the day that hopefully council will accept them. Page 3, I'm not going to go over that one, but that is management's responsibility for the financial reporting. So that's a page that's signed by the mayor and the CAO, taking responsibility for the financial information. And so page 4 is the consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus. So these are the revenues and expenditures for the town and its subsidiaries for the year ended March 31st, 2017. The first column is the budget that was originally set, the actual results for 2017, and the actual results for 2016. So if we just look at the revenues, you had originally set a budget of $18,453,591, and you came in at $19,119,212. So you're about $660,000 ahead of what you originally had budgeted, which is obviously good. And if we compare it to the prior year, your revenues last year were $19,588,377. So they're down about $470,000. A couple of the reasons why your revenues would be down from the prior year are that you did decrease your rates, both your commercial and your residential rates. As well, you did increase your sewer rates, but together they still resulted in a lower tax revenue for you for the year. Another item that's down is what we call conditional transfers from other governments. That's where you report your gas tax money, and your gas tax money comes in evenly each year, but it only becomes revenue when you spend it. So in 2016, you'd actually spent more of your gas tax money on specified projects than you did for 2017. So that's another reason why your revenue would be down from the prior year. In terms of the expenditures, you can see that you had set a budget of $18,329,217, and you came in at $18,849,020. So you're over budget by about $520,000. And it really depends on the projects that you have underway each year, what it is that you're doing in your roads and your streets, and your different types of expenditures for your playgrounds. But one of the areas that we can look at that we see in terms of your subsidiaries is the Mariner Center did incur significantly higher expenses this year. They had repairs and maintenance. They had some studies that were done. They were funded, so there was revenue associated with them as well, but their expenses were higher. And in terms of comparing it to the prior year, your expenses last year were $18,514,684. So your expenses have grown over the prior year by $334,000. And there's several things in there. One of the bigger items is the cleanup at the Lake George site. So that increased your expenses this year. As well, in the prior 2 years, you had a credit from Nova Scotia Power for the implementation of your LED lights. So when you did that conversion, you got a credit in your power bill for a couple of years. In 2017, now you're back to your regular billing with no credits. So that's why you actually have a power bill or a power expense in 2017. So those are some of the larger items that changed from year to year. So when we look at just the operations, you had set a budget to make a profit of $124,374, and you came in at $270,192. So you're a bit ahead of what your budget was for the annual surplus. Last year's surplus was $1,073,693, so part of the reason that it is down is that gas tax money. And that can't be predicted, and it's going to be up some years and down some years, because if you spend it on projects, then it's going to be a higher revenue. In years where you do projects where you get funding from other bodies, you're not drawing on your gas tax money, you're not going to have as much revenue in those years. So that was to be expected. The two final items there, just after the annual surplus. So the gain on disposal of tangible capital assets, that came actually from the airport, and that was the sale of the land at the airport. And then you have an item called other pension recovery, and that's the line which just shows the difference in your pension plan for your employees. So in actual fact, this year, your pension plan had more assets than liabilities, so you have a small amount of a pickup because the assets grew faster than the liabilities. So at the end of the day, your annual surplus is $475,090. You had an accumulated surplus at the beginning of the year of $70,199,660. So at the end of this year, your accumulated surplus is $70,674,750.
Any questions for Gloria right now, or you want them at the end, Gloria, or does it make any difference?
Whatever you like, yeah.
Any questions right now for Gloria? Just an interesting one. Myself and the CEO just had a brief little chat. In 2008 or 2009, with the pension, we had a pension liability of close to $2 million. So now we're
39,000.
439,000 ahead of the game. So the market's done very well. But we had a liability of less than 9 years ago of $2 million in that account. So.
And it wasn't
We've
just the
done
turnaround in the market too, though. You had to make extra payments into your
Yep.
pension plan to start to bring that back up to more level playing ground.
I
Yes,
think
there
it-
was a turn in the market.
I think at one time, Jeff, they wanted to do it all in one lump sum too, wasn't it? Weren't they talking about that at one time? Like pay it all off at once? There's talk of it at one time anyways. Go ahead.
Yep. So let's just turn to page 5.
Go
Consolidated
ahead.
state.
Councillor Food.
Oh, sorry.
We're just talking about, we're just dealing with what we've heard so far. So in the, fire protection item on page 4, I assume that that's included in protective services, is it?
So you're talking about the expense side, sorry?
Page 4,
Yeah,
2017, 508,505.
that's your revenue for, yeah, that's the
Revenue.
amounts
Does
that you
include
charge
what
other
we-
people.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Does that include what we received from the municipality government?
Mhm.
Do we receive anything from any other entities or municipalities or First Nations or anything like that?
I don't think so.
Do we receive anything from Acadia Band First Nation?
Yeah,
That's for,
yeah, it is, but it's like, what, 15,000 or something?
So there is some kind of arrangement between us and them to provide firefighting services,
Yes.
and they are paid something for it. So the total amount of operating, 508, including what the municipality pays?
that's the budget. You set the budget of 508, you came in at 497 is your actual.
All right, I got
That's your
you. All
revenue,
right.
yeah.
Okay. And so in the protective service, we have, I assume, the police,
Yep,
the bylaw enforcement officer,
yep,
the fire,
Yep.
correct?
yep.
What else do we have?
Building
Building
inspection,
inspection. Oh, okay.
EMO.
EMO?
Yeah.
All right. See, so you break it down under revenues more finer than you do in the expenses item, and it's a little bit difficult to track
Yep,
the
and,
comparables.
and this follows the prescribed mandate of how they look from the public sector accounting standards. Yep,
So what do we owe the federal government for?
so are you on page 5 now?
520, page 5.
Yep, that's your policing, that's the fourth quarter payment for your policing services.
Oh, okay, so, okay, all right. I see, so that's booked as a liability.
Yep. It
Hasn't
hadn't
been
been
paid
paid,
yet.
it was billed, but not paid at year
Yeah,
end.
okay, good.
Yep,
And the total for policing is just south of 2 million?
Close to 2, yeah.
Yeah.
So acquisition of tangible capital assets. So what does that encompass?
1.9. So
Does
that's
it
all the
encompass
capital.
things like the high school and the school down at South End, or does it, where is it?
No, the acquisition of tangible capital assets would be the money that you have spent on Cliff and Brown Street.
Yeah.
So that project, there was also a project on Argyle and Hibernia Street. There was also playground improvements. There was the dog park improvements. There was a whole bunch of things.
So we
That's
didn't
what-
go and buy these things, we completed them,
They're projects of things that
projects
you
that were
built.
completed within
Yep.
the fiscal year.
Yep, that's correct.
And that would include the gas tax money coming in to be contributed to the acquisition.
If they're eligible, yep, that's right, yep. Yep,
I assume somewhere there's a breakdown of how much the province puts into that Cliff Street, Brown Street deal and the feds and so on like that?
yep.
How hard is it to break that out so that we understand what we're putting in as a percentage of the total?
Yeah, we have, basically, we have the contract to say what the contribution agreement is for the different levels of government for that project, so we can break that
Would it be
stuff
possible
out.
sometime, to just give us a breakdown so we understand? I mean, it's like, what is it, just shy of, it's south of $4 million project, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Roughly, though, it's not exactly that. There's a breakdown, because some of those things are cost-funded on different formulas, I think. So it'd be interesting to see those,
Okay.
and maybe put out a good news story about one of the good things previous government did under Paul Martin was the gas tax thing in response to the SCM. And, okay. So structures and improvements, well, maybe you haven't got there. Page 30, I'll come to that later.
Go ahead, Gloria, keep
Okay.
on.
So I'm just going to go back to page 5.
Okay.
All right. So page 5 is the consolidated statement of financial position. So these are the assets and the liabilities. And you can see the top half is clearly defined as financial assets. So in public sector accounting standards, we pull out those that are readily convertible to cash. That's what a financial asset is. And a non-financial asset is put below the line at the bottom because that's your structures, your sewers, and all your equipment. And they're not things that you have available for sale to generate cash to pay your liabilities. So they're put below the line. So in terms of your financial assets, you can see at the top, you had $11,596,011 in financial assets. 75% of that sits in a cash balance. And that's cash that's in your reserves, and it's cash at all of your subsidiaries as well, all added together. And then you have your sewer and water rate receivable and your taxes receivable. Both of those are subject to significant amount of audit work to make sure that they're collectible. That's part of the process that we go through. Other receivables, a couple items down, is $561,920. That includes almost $200,000 of HST that would be receivable from the government. And again, we're looking at them to make sure that they're collectible receivables. The very last item called tangible capital assets held for resale, that's the high school and that's the South Centennial building. And that's an estimate of what management expects that you're going to be able to recover if you're able to sell those two buildings. It's not what the original cost was. It's funny.
You have Your worship, you have a comment, or you might have a comment there, a question?
She's reading my face. $105,000 for two schools? You have to explain that to me. And I know
Okay.
there's an explanation, because
Yeah.
Jeff would always say, just ask why.
Yeah. And they are truly just an estimate of what management thinks that you'll be able to recover. So the high school, when it originally came back to you as a property, it had a much higher original cost. But at the time, you were in some negotiations and you had an offer on the table for a certain amount of money. So that's what it was booked at the time.
I gotcha,
And
okay.
so you've had offers have come and gone since then, so it's gone up and down, but we leave it at basically what the original estimate was. And then when South Centennial came to you this year, the same idea, management made an estimate of how much they think they can sell it for.
So
And
that's,
the two of
that's
them.
the difference. I was thinking, oh my goodness, they're worth a lot of money, but this is based on what we would get for it.
That's right.
And,
What we would accept.
I think
Yes.
Councilor McLeod and myself had the same question yesterday too, so
Yeah.
we didn't have the same look on our face, but we had the same question.
I didn't, I'm an open book, so poor Gloria's thinking, uh-oh. Thank you.
Not a problem, not a problem. So those are the assets. On terms of the liabilities, Mr. Hood has already, or Councillor Hood has already asked the question about the amount that's due to the federal government and its agencies, and that's the payment for your policing services for the fourth quarter in 2017. Due to provincial governments and its agencies, that's the amount that's due for housing. And that's an annual payment, once a year that you make that payment, and that's for the deficit in the Housing Authority. And then you have your normal payables and accruals, and you'll see it is up a bit over the prior year, but you were in the middle of construction at the end of March. The construction had started on the Main Street in Cliff. Work had been done there, so there are several bills in there for projects that were underway. Other post-employment benefits of $755,000, that's a liability that's payable to your employees for service awards and payouts when they retire. And then you have deferred revenue, $1,232,000. The bulk of that is your gas tax money that you have received and haven't spent yet. About $1.1 million is your gas tax money. And then you have your long-term debt, $2,166,000. So your total liabilities are $6,450,595. So you have a net financial asset position of $5,145,416. And so that's kind of a target number that people will look at when they compare town to town and municipality to municipality. Is it positive? Is it negative? And so you're in a very healthy, positive position. But we all know that you're going to be incurring some significant costs over the next couple of years. The Domtex demolition is one that's current and happening as we speak. So that money can very quickly be used up. But as of the end of this year, and it grew over the prior year, again, into a good position. Towns tend to struggle more because they have more responsibility for the roads and the sewers and the water than the municipalities. So towns, if you looked across Nova Scotia, you would see a few more towns with possibly a negative balance there. And then your non-financial assets, so you have what we call net book value. That's not the original cost of what you paid for all the buildings, but it's the building cost less what they've been aged to date of $65,454,000. And then you have a small amount of prepaids and inventories. So of your accumulated surplus of $70,674,000 that we looked at the prior page, 65 million of that is sitting in your capital assets. So 91% of your surplus is invested in what you have in your community. So those are the two most important pages. I've gone over the notes and the supporting schedules with the audit committee yesterday, so I wasn't going to do them today, but Councillor Hood, if you have a few more questions on the back pages, I'm more than willing to answer them for you.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Well, I've got one on, so you mentioned under the item due to provincial and government agencies, and I think I heard you say, you mentioned Department of Housing? Mm-hmm. What's the number we pay for low rental and or subsidized housing units to the Department of Housing of the province annually?
So that payment there is for the deficit in housing. Do you have other payments that you make for that? No, that's the only payment.
So the town is paying
$200.
$221,000 a year to assist
Yep.
subsidized housing
Yep.
in the town. That's a firm number, we can quote that? I got a place to quote it.
You're going to have to fight for the mic on that one because the mayor has the same idea.
The other question I had is this. You mentioned the schools.
Yep.
I asked this question at the one and only Industrial Commission meeting that I attended. And it's the only one that I was invited to. I think they knew the mess was coming, but then shortly after that, I was unelected by the electors. But one of the questions I asked in that first meeting was, what if it's worth nothing? And I asked the accountants this, what if it's worth nothing? Didn't get a very good answer because they had it on the books for, I don't know, something south of $4 million. I said, well, if it was worth nothing, would this statement balance? Wouldn't, in fact, if it was worth nothing, would the Industrial Commission be broke? So I ask those kind of questions. So what if the high school is worth nothing and we're going to have to demolish it? What does that do? Do we take any reserves that way?
If you had a plan in place before the end of March 31st, or even subsequent to that, where you made a commitment that you were going to demolish it, we would set up a liability for the cost to demolish it. But you don't, I mean, that's a possibility in the future, but we don't have enough substance to say, yes, that's what you're going to do, so therefore we can't record the liability. But if you had, if it was documented in your
When it becomes a
minutes.
realistic possibility, or probability.
That's right.
When it becomes a probability
That's
that
right.
that's going to happen.
That's correct.
All right.
And that's why it's only recorded at 100,000 for 2 properties, because realistically, you might list it for $200,000, but really, what do you think you can recover from it? And that's why the number is so much lower.
I'd take $1 right now. Want it? Well, anyway, so that's all the questions I have.
Thank you, Counselor. Go ahead, Gloria.
Nope, I'm good.
You're good?
So we've gone through all the notes and schedules at the back with the audit committee, so.
It may be just one thing, and Jeff, or Jerry pointed it out yesterday, is funding on the gas tax, on how it's used. So if we get provincial and federal funding on the Cliff Street or Brown Street or another project, gas tax money cannot be used for that project.
So that's why your gas tax balance is actually growing, is because you're doing lots of projects, but you're getting funding from other bodies. So there's a limitation of how much federal money you can use on a project. So if you're getting federal money already, you can't necessarily dip into your gas tax money because that's federal money as well. So that's why it hasn't gone down a lot in the last couple of years. But it doesn't mean that you won't have projects in the future that you won't get other funding for, that you will spend that money on.
Any other questions for Gloria and Chris? Cliff, you good?
I'm good.
Good.
Thank you.
I have a motion to accept the statements as presented. Moved by the mayor, seconded by Councillor Barry. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Thank you, Gloria.
Thank you for your time and thank you for your questions.
And I believe we're going to call a special meeting after this, Your Worship, to pass it at a regular council meeting so Jerry can send them into the government for his reasons. CAO report. Any questions for Jeff? Or Jeff, any comments?
Thank you, Your Deputy Worship. I've included my update on the strategic priorities that were set by council last January, and at the last council meeting, we agreed to get together in December and refresh. So they are there, and most of them are at a point of advancing or having been completed. And so from my perspective, it is time to reestablish some priorities. The one thing that I would say is that, you know, if you look at the timelines, I didn't change the timelines on when these were originally set, and things take a little longer than we think when we sit in a workshop and want to get things done, right? The reality is when we depend on other people, partnerships and whatnot, things do take a while. But pretty proud to say that things have moved in a positive direction on just about everything on the list there. So.
Your Worship.
Thank you. With regard to the joint council workshop, is this where we are in the last few days? Linda, were we reaching out to the other units?
There's going to be a joint meeting on the 24th. That's what they're looking at right now.
24th of October?
But that's a joint council meeting, right? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
He's got his light on there.
So, Your Worship, the Joint Council Workshop was a joint priority setting session, and I did what I could do on that front in terms of reaching out to my colleagues and requesting that we do that, and I wasn't able to get agreement. So more recently, Her Worship reached out at the political level to request the very same thing, and I don't know that we've heard
No.
anything at this point.
No response.
So it's still a work in progress, but on the mayor's plate at this point.
Good. Okay, thank you.
Good. Thank you. Any questions for the CAO? Good. Fire Department report. Chief. I think I asked you a question earlier, but how did the exercise go this weekend?
The exercise went very well, actually. We learned a lot from it, mainly in the command and control. We also learned about how many resources we have in the immediate area. We're also planning on moving forward with that and doing some more training in the future. So I was very, very happy with it, actually.
That was an EMO exercise. And the other question that Her Worship always asks is, how are we looking on the recruitment effort? Have we,
The
we're
numbers are
still
up
at
and-
it?
Yeah, the recruitment's done, actually, and the new members are taking training already. But the number was up and down, so I don't know why I put it on paper, because it's up and down so much. And right now, it's down to 5 from 7 it was at a little while ago. But the female participation is up to 4 instead of 2 now, and so it's 4 female and 1 male. And I really try and push the diversity thing, and I'm still pushing it. So until we get into a phase where the training they're taking is going to impact on-scene safety and stuff like that, we'll still accept newer members, right? So, but it's up and down, just like every other recruitment.
Good, thank you, Chief. Is there anything for the Chief?
Thank you.
So we're good, thank you very much. Planning Department report, I don't see Morris here, so we're good there. Any questions, you can pass them on upstairs and they can answer those. Operational Services Department, anything for Dave? Chad, oh, Chad, yes. Okay. Anything for Chad? Chad's in the back. Finance Department report, Jerry.
Yeah, I did print off a statement for both the town's operations and the water utility that I think are on your desks. If not, they're part of your package. Linda, did you get? Maybe not. But nothing of significance to report. If we allow for the capital and expenditures and some revenues that grants we've received, we're kind of moving along according to plan. Just some maintenance items, timing differences, nothing of significance to report on the statements at all.
Good, maybe Councilor McLeod, maybe we'll ask him one question. We see Gloria presented the consolidated statements to us, and we had a big number that they said we had as the surplus, but what's the actual cash number, so people won't think that we're socking away $700 and something thousand.
Right, the actual non-consolidated statement for the town itself. So town operations, we had a surplus of $33,000.
On a budget of $17 million.
Budget of $17 million, and we had budgeted $400 surplus of $445, so we came in at about 33.
Good, thank you.
So just a small surplus.
Any questions for Jerry? Councillor Hood, you good?
I haven't got any questions.
You got your light on though. You keep your you're like Candy always kept his light on.
Don't tell me that.
Yarmouth Recreation, Frank, come on up. Frank went to, go ahead. Frank went to the Leisure Services annual meeting in Cape Breton last week, and I think he did some homework. So give us a little overview of that, Frank, and anything else that came up under your report, please.
Well, we did have a good provincial conference at Member 2 in Sydney, and yeah, it was great time. That's the 3rd time in the last 5 years that we've partnered with our First Nations friends in recreation, and we're making great strides with partnerships here locally with Acadia First Nations. I apologize, I didn't have the report attached on the online agenda, but I did give you a copy just before the meeting today. So just to touch on a few things from the Recreation Department, priorities that were identified at our planning session in January. First off, facility needs assessment. That's something that's on the radar, and there's asset mapping surveys that are happening with the town and municipality, as well as something that's quite new. There's some requirements coming down from the province as far as accessibility plans and making all of our infrastructure accessible. So that's something that's coming up on the radar that we'll be working towards with our recreation facilities for sure. Another update, Lake Milo repairs. We did install heat pumps at Lake Milo, and we're looking forward to some cost savings from those items installed this winter. Outdoor ball hockey rink was another priority. That project's up and finished and getting lots of activity. To date, we've had 24 bookings, but probably 3 times as much use for drop-in use, which we are encouraging drop-in use, so that it's being very well used. The last item is use agreement. We finally got some gravel being turned for the new elementary school, and initial discussions have taken place with Jared Purdy at Yarmouth Central School. They are very much in favor of the Recreation Department being involved with community use of that school and looking at the classroom use, gymnasium, number one, and common spaces. The other thing that I did want to mention was that there are strategies for advancing recreation in Nova Scotia that our department and staff have been involved with, and I did list them on the second page for just for your information. That, and I just wanted to point out, I'm not going to go through them all, but I just wanted to point out that the strategy for advancing recreation in Nova Scotia aligns very well with the strategies that we're working on locally here in the town and municipality of Yarmouth, and mainly with our physical activity plan. A lot of the same priorities that we have as far as getting activity rates up with all age segments, I guess with a priority facing young females, and increasing participation rates in active transportation are our high priorities for the province and for Yarmouth Recreation.
Any questions for Frank? Councillor Hood?
Frank, we brought up the issue of the backboards on Centretown School Ground a while back, and there was some suggestions about how to solve that in the interim. I drove by this morning, and I guess the good news is they got enough holes in them now. It's just like practicing on a glass backboard. Any chance we could bring it back to a solid backboard instead of a rust-filled
For sure.
cheese? You know, it looks like a rope from cheese, for God's sake.
It's been, for sure, Councillor Hood, and it's been more of a timing issue. Todd Muse and I have talked. We did a visit to the old high school, looked at some of the backboards there. It's been more of a timing issue as Todd was away for Communities in Bloom, and then I was away with conference, so it is on the radar. And
Frank,
we haven't
to be
quite
serious, is it viable to use those backboards over there?
for sure. That's
Okay.
that's for the past number of years, drop-in type of facilities like that are key. People that use those don't have to wait for the rec department to put on a basketball program. So that's a priority with us. We haven't, to be honest, we haven't quite figured out who's going to pay for it, but between Todd and I, we'll figure it out.
Might even find a sponsor in the community that came and asked.
That was one of the first things that we talked about, was maybe getting some business sponsors and, putting them, doing something
Okay,
like that.
thanks.
So.
Maybe one other quick one, Frank. The outdoor hockey rink. The feedback.
Excellent. Now that minor hockey's starting up, you're seeing groups showing up earlier for their ice times, and they're out there on the ball hockey court working on some things. I think it's going to be a great addition to the complex.
Thank you, Frank. CAO.
Frank, we had talked a couple weeks back about doing some counting of the users of the active transportation trail. Do you want to talk about that for a minute?
Yes, just on Tuesday, I did go up to Dalhousie University and picked up some equipment that we have on loan, and we are going to be doing some studies on Maud Lewis Trail. So we have some tube counters and a pyro box, which is nothing to do with
John just
fires
jumped up. Yeah, John just
or,
jumped up in his chair.
So basically, we're looking at doing some counting on Connect 2 projects, which Maud Lewis, I think we had three projects within the Maud Lewis Trail. So looking forward to that, and it's really high tech, really above my technical abilities. But once we get the equipment set up, we just notify Dalhousie. They flick a button there, and all the information comes through their system at Dal. So I'm looking forward to seeing lots of numbers, especially around noontime on a weekday.
Good. Anything else for Frank? Thank you, Frank. Economic Development Report. Natalie.
there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Anything for Natalie today? Everybody seen her report? Geez, you're getting off easy. See, I always told Danny that you could never see that light. He always thought it was just because it was him. Councillor Cleveland.
First opportunity I have, I'm moving. I just wanted to actually send a compliment your way when it comes to the social media and the way our Facebook page has been looking lately with the Get Involved attempts and the events. It's really captivating. It looks exciting, stuff I'm going to anyway, and I thought, gee, I'd go to that. Well, wait a minute, I am going there already. But it's really well done, so my compliments to you. It's good stuff.
Team effort.
Anything else? Councillor McLeod.
Hi, Natalie. The facade program, doing wonderfully well, isn't it? It's possible that we're going to run out of budget this year. And-
Yes.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure that we don't run out of budget somehow.
You heard what Jerry said? We only had 33,000 this year, Jim. You heard
I
that?
understand that, but the three new addresses on the water side of Main Street are great. It looks really good.
Yeah, it's certainly made an impact now. I think they're almost finished.
Yeah.
They're finished the Frenchies, and the Pier 1 buildings, I think they're almost done.
Close
But I
done.
think it's certainly made a huge, as we had expected.
Yeah.
So how we're dealing with, if there are any new applications that come in, we have basically enough funds to support one full application. And then any interest that comes in beyond that, we basically receive the application, we time stamp it, we review it for eligibility, and then basically we respond to the client. The application meets the criteria, but would need to be reviewed again pending any budget for the next fiscal year. So if they were to move ahead with anything, it's at their own risk, but the full intention is for the society to come back and present to council looking for November, and then that would be input to your budgeting review.
Good. Thank you, Natalie. Any other questions? I think we're good. Engineer, anything for Dave today? Dave, any comments, questions?
Main Street is pretty well done now. I think it turned out well. We saved some money reusing the granite curbs, probably 40,000 or so. We've completed another section of Cliff Street and it's been paved from William to Aberdeen and it's open again. Clements Avenue multi-use trail is finished, and that turned out fairly well, I think. And the rest are in the process of being or underway or planned or being designed. I don't think there's anything else I wanted to mention.
Anything for Dave? In any capacity? Your worship.
Is Doug Melanson Park, tender drawings and specification received?
Yep,
It's been tendered.
it's out to tender now.
So we stay within our budget, what council decided, right? And if it goes outside, we know, sort of.
Yeah.
Okay, I think that's it. That might be it.
Good. CAO.
So just on the park, council did approve an amount of money, and that they were hoping would be sufficient to do a certain amount of work, and there were some doubts about that, and so they reviewed their plans there, and we had engineers develop specifications that we believe will land within budget. So when the tender results come in, that'll come back, and it'll have to be within budget. Council set the parameters.
My head's saying it was a match. They were gonna raise money.
Yes, they are, but we're doing phase one. Right.
When's the tender Closing date? October 19th?
Yeah.
October 19th. Councillor Hood?
So we're going to pay half of developing that dog park, and the other?
Doug,
Dog
this
park.
is the Milton School, Doug Melanson
Oh,
Park.
I'm talking the wrong one. Okay. I thought we were talking about the dog park.
No.
But you know what?
Put your light on, your worship.
Oh, my goodness, I do this. Thank you, Deputy Worship.
Things don't go well, you might be over there permanently, who knows?
Right?
That'd be a promotion, that's called, Pam.
Promotion, I can breathe. Woo. Okay, so to Cliff's question, Jeff, maybe you can explain that, because it's a good point. We need to be clear. So we are paying partial of the Doug Melanson, and the dog park, we are paying,
I think the culvert and the property, right? CAO?
yeah. Deputy Worship, put the CAO's light on. Come on, get on the
Thank you.
ball.
So two different parks, two different community initiatives. The Doug Melanson Park is up on the former site of the Milton School on Brunswick Street. And our commitment there, they came up with a concept that was roughly, using rough numbers here off the top of my head, $150,000 development cost. And they asked the town to do phase one, which was the hardscaping pathways and whatnot onto the property. And so that is the work that was designed and is now out to tender, the phase one. They're fundraising to do phases 2 and 3, which are completely on their nickel. And they're hoping to get donations for specific trees, plants, and so on, gardens within the park. The dog park is a different project. That one is on Jarvis Road. We own a significant parcel there. The town council had committed to a dog park for the community to develop. Town council then paid for a design for the dog park. Where they had consultants come in and talk to the dog owners and whatnot, and understood what the need was, and developed a concept and budget. It's fairly rich, and I think the local group is going to make some adjustments to make it more reasonable for them to manage the cost of. So our only criteria on that is we don't compromise quality, so we don't put in residential grade benches and fences where we're building a public park. So council had agreed to pay for the cost of a culvert and some grading or bush cutting on the property, which Chad has coordinated, I believe, on the site. Seen quite a bit of alders laying down, and the culvert is in. And so that is the extent of the commitment that council has made to that project. Now it's on the group, I'll call them the society, I believe they're incorporated, to raise money and to build the park.
Councillor Hood?
So your worship, on both of those parks, the only concern I have is, excuse me, when you have co-funders or funders contributing to, I have a concern that we'll get something half completed, our end of it, and the rest of it doesn't come through. What assurances do we have in each case that that's not going to happen?
Did you turn your light off?
Other than
Need,
the good wishes
Jim,
of
turn your
well-intentioned people.
Okay, good to go. Go ahead, CAO.
That's essentially what you have. They haven't mortgaged their homes or anything, or made any commitments that we can foreclose on or anything like that. So you have a society in Milton that is made up of some people involved in Communities in Bloom and the Milton Improvement Society, and they've put together a group, and they're intending to do the fundraising to do phases 2 and 3. And there is no guarantee. It's on their good intentions and promises, and the same would go for the dog park group. Again, there is no security on their commitment other than their name and their good intentions. And so, we are helping them to some degree with taking donations here at Town Hall if that assists them. But beyond that, it's up to their own resources and their own networks to be able to.
So
Secure
on
the
the one on Doug Melanson Park, it's basically the same group of people that spearheaded the Sealand Landers Park, I would think, the Milton Improvement Society. So do we, as Councillor Hood alluded to, do we not do it? We get the tender, do we not do that work until they have a commitment or have an actual amount of money, or how does that work? I think that's probably what he's alluding to. Gonna need a light here, I think. Oh, go ahead.
So they're very anxious for us to do that first phase because they think that the show that some ground is being broken, that something is happening on the site, that it isn't just a wish to have a park, but a park is actually being developed, will help them to actually bring in some cash, bring in a lot of cash donations. They do have some donations, but they'd like to see something happen. So, and I tend to believe that those people will follow through and be successful. I hope they're successful in the timeline that they have in mind. Some of their donations can be fairly small items. Contribute to some plantings within a garden area within the park, or people could sponsor trees or park furniture. They've got several options available to people, and I think they'll be successful. It may take a little longer than they anticipated, but they think that having something happen on the site, our work will help stimulate some donations.
Councillor Hood.
So it leaves us sort of in a situation where we have to kind of evaluate the creditworthiness of proponents. And I have no trouble with looking at one proponent that has a track history in the community, consisting of a number of organizations that have a track history in the community of delivering on the things that they do. Where I have a problem is a proponent that may not have the same history of performance, to put it mildly. And for us to go out and spend a significant amount of money on a project that would see it only a third, half completed, and then be left stuck with doing, we'd have to come up with the money, pay it, if it didn't get raised by the other parties. So it's a judgment call on our part. But I think we should be vigilant in looking at those things. Thanks.
Thank you. CAO and then Councillor McLeod.
Just on the dog park, the dog park project, it is up to the group to raise the funds to do any additional work beyond what you see there now. Our commitment was the culvert is in. We've done the bushwhacking to delineate the area. There'll be fill brought to the site to help to put it to the proper grade. But as far as park development, whether it's fences or what have you, that will be up to them to raise the funds and to do the. Sorry? Or come back to us. We're not encouraging that.
Yeah, or another municipal jump in.
Perhaps.
Councillor McLeod.
So this is a good chance for the public to realize they can make donations to the two locations in question, and they're both deserving of support from the community, not just the town of Yarmouth, but in the county of Yarmouth. The only other comment I wanted to make is that in Dave's report, I'm especially interested in item number 8, the asset management plan. And I'm glad to see that going on, and we have a lot more detail to get to it. So that was part of our auditor discussion yesterday, Phil,
yep.
And so I'm very happy about that. That's what I'm all about. I want to make our town the wealthiest town in Nova Scotia.
As long as you keep living in it, Jim, we will be. Anything else on that? I guess not. Transit bus. Chad, come on up. Yeah.
What would you like to know?
Well, we'll start with who, what, when, where, and why. How's the bus working now?
As of today, not too bad. As most of you know, we've had some warranty issues with the bus, fairly substantial. The bus was taken out of service for a few weeks, and we had to rent a local van. However, the van is not wheelchair accessible, so we don't really provide the level of service that we would when the bus is operating. But the route seems to be established. For the most part, we're not getting any complaints or concerns from our regular ridership, and the schedule is established as well. The schedule, of course, doesn't have much of a leeway built into it, so sometimes when there's a detour or inclement weather or heavy traffic, we may get a little behind in the schedule, but all in all, everything seems well.
So what do you think, Chad, the next step is us having our own backup? How does that scenario play out?
Well, Jeff and I spoke about that earlier today. I guess, we have a couple of options. We either look for a second-hand accessible bus, or a new accessible bus, or a van, a 14-passenger van. However, again, when we take the bus out of service and replace it with a 14-passenger van, we no longer meet our service requirements. We have a lot of riders who don't necessarily use wheelchairs, but they do have some mobility issues, and it's hard for them to manipulate and get in and out of a 14-passenger van.
Well, that's a question I was going to ask you. What was the implication once we took the bus out of service and brought the van in? I wonder how many patrons that we lost over the couple of weeks. It's hard to tell.
I don't have those figures. I could probably poll the drivers. We probably lost a few riders, but we quickly got them back.
Yep, Your Worship.
Are we under warranty?
For certain components, yeah. The chassis and the engine and chassis, which are GM products, are still under warranty, but a lot of components like the ramp and certain components like that are not under warranty. But
So
the most recent incident was a warranty repair,
Okay.
and it was out of service for 3 weeks.
All right. I have
Was
three
that getting
questions.
parts in,
Okay.
Chad? Was it the biggest part of that time, or just?
Yeah, part of it, yeah.
Part of
Yeah.
it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Let's see who comes on first. CAO and then Councillor, you all set, Your Worship?
I'm not, but I can't remember what the other
Okay,
questions were.
Okay,
It
so,
happens in that chair.
so we were, I talked to Jerry and I talked to Chad about our situation with the bus, and it is not a good situation to have to rent a private van that doesn't provide the level of service that our customers are expecting, and to rent it for as long as 3 weeks at a time. Although the work may have been warranty, there's no warranty on the bus rental, the replacement bus. And so we've spent a considerable amount of money. I don't have an exact number for you, but a considerable amount of money this past year, where we've had 2 major repairs done to our van on a rental. And so, it's illustrating to us the good sense in having a backup van. So we've talked about the options of buying perhaps a used van, which would lower our level of service. We could buy a used accessible bus that somebody else is done with, which has some implications, or we could buy a new bus. And my thought on this is that we're going to have to buy a new bus anyway in the not too distant future. These things don't last forever. We put 100,000 kilometers on that bus in the first year.
Year and a half.
Year and a half of all in-town, 12-hour-day miles. And so, given that there's a several-month delivery period by the time you tender and order and receive a bus, I'm recommending to you that you consider directing staff to begin the process of procuring a new transit bus. And when that is delivered, we will have the existing bus as a backup, and we'll have 2 fully accessible buses able to service your route.
I I don't mind making that motion. I have a hard time purchasing a backup bus for a new bus. So somebody has to calm me down because, wow. The CAO's gonna answer my why, he's gonna give me my why.
Sorry, the new bus you would purchase would become your primary, would become your dominant bus. You would still keep the bus that you have now in the rotation so that you're not putting all the miles on one bus. But that would give you time to get the other bus serviced when you need to get it serviced, and when you need to get it repaired, you're not dropping your level of service and paying somebody else, buying somebody else's bus. Right? You either buy your own bus.
Find somebody else's problem.
I mean, I signed those checks, and I swallow really hard, because it costs a lot of money. I guess I'm just thinking, it's so new, but is it a couple of years old now?
It's got 100.
It's almost a couple.
It's about 18 months old, but it's a lot of wear and tear.
Yeah,
So,
it
you know,
is. It's
A lot of
just hard to
start
say.
and stops and,
We were so proud, we're just getting up and running, we're so proud of our new bus.
Yeah.
That's not gonna be so new soon. So I made the motion anyway to direct staff to,
Moved by your worship, we have a seconder for that. I'll second. Seconded by Councillor McLeod. Councillor Cleveland.
Well, my only comment is, are we going to have to buy a new bus every 18 months?
that's exactly
This is a
it.
problem.
So my question would be,
We'll go
before,
to CAO, then yourself, Councillor Hood.
Yeah, I don't think you need to buy a bus every 18 months, but you do need two buses to run a transit service, right? And that's the issue, is that we're buying two buses right now, but one of them we don't own.
Right.
We're buying it for somebody else, and.
Well, if you had two buses, I'm sorry, my apologies for interrupting you. But my thought is, if you buy a new bus at this point, do you start perhaps rotating them on an even basis? You get more maintenance, you get a rest, you know, that kind of thing. Is that kind of the
That's
the
exactly,
strategy you're
that's
looking at?
exactly as you'll end up extending the life of the bus we have, and eventually that bus won't be serviceable on our route. Hopefully that's years down the road, some years down the road, and you'll rotate a new bus in, and you'll have a bus that we would receive maybe 6 months from now. That would be it's still in the rotation. So, we were advised when we started this, when we had
Wally back.
Wally do our study on introducing transit service. He did say you need a backup bus, and we started without one, hoping that we could make it work. And what we found is that warranty things even, there's a significant cost to that when you don't have your own backup bus. So two buses in a rotation gives us a little bit of breathing room, a little bit of comfort, and allows you to maintain a level of service that is accessible, and that is, I think, an important part of providing the service in this community.
Didn't we look, Chad, too, I think at one of the options when Wally first discussed that about a backup bus? Didn't we look at something in, was it Truro that had or somebody in Truro had a bus? I think we looked at a couple places. I think one was in Truro, maybe a company up there. Are you all set, Wade? You good to go, or you?
One more thing.
One more thing, okay. Go ahead.
Okay, what kind of money are we talking? How much did the last one cost, I guess is more. I'm not asking you to guess what the next one will.
Yeah, I'm guessing, was it in the 120 range? Is that?
yeah, I think without the
Sorry.
without the BEA system, I think it was 120.
Yes, without the,
135 for sure.
Yeah.
Okay,
With all the other stuff on it. Councillor?
right.
All set, Wade? Good. Councillor Hood?
so we should be able to find out, before we spec it, what the normal and expected mileage is for a bus, for a vehicle like that. There must be people out here that can tell us, so that when we do our spec for the tender, that we understand what we're supposed to get out of that type of vehicle. I mean, we're talking, that's a GM, isn't it?
Mhm.
Hey, folks, it's a GM. Don't buy one soon. But anyway, we had 1,600. Yeah, go to Ford.
Yeah.
We had 1,600 and a little bit in August. and 2016, I'm sorry, this year, which was an increase over last year, quite significant. But that's 53 people a day. What's the capacity of the bus?
At one time?
How many passengers can the bus carry?
14.
14. Well, you talk about temporary replacements. Would we just raise the taxi to 8? It cost you $424 a day to give those guys a taxi ride. How much are we paying for the replacement?
For a bus?
Well, no, whatever we've been doing.
Oh. I'd have to look it up, but we've spent a lot of money.
Taxi business could use some money. $424 a day. Let's see if it sounds high, but frankly, to give every one of those 53 people a taxi ride, it would cost you $400 a day, thereabouts. Just for thinking purposes. I'm only putting that out as think. Listen, and by the way, I do support this, but I think that if we get a second bus, we should be getting something like, I'm going to guess we should get 300,000 kilometers out of one of those buses.
Sure.
And that would give us 6 years going.
So, Your Worship? Just on your point about checking with others and understanding what service life we should get out of them and that. So we spec'd our first bus, and I know we checked with others, we just didn't make it up. But Halifax is obviously the largest transit operator in the province, and they're quite approachable in terms of sharing information, that kind of information. So if council approves for us to go ahead and begin that process, we'll review the spec we used, and we'll also talk to them about our experience with this vehicle, and because they run vehicles approximately this size as well as the big buses. Maybe they have some service history that they could give us some hints on the specification to get the most for our dollar.
The point of all that is you don't necessarily take the lowest tender when these things come in. You look to see experience in other places, and you prepare yourself to perhaps make another tender even if it's a bit higher because of the proven reliability of the product.
That's right, and we have a history now, that's right.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
Question is on the floor. Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Thank you. Anything else for Chad? I think we're good, Chad. Thank you. Correspondence for action, Roaring Twenties Auto Club re-extension of 2018 show, and I think they're just going to make the show a day longer. Is it, Jeff? Let's go ahead. Go ahead.
So the letter actually has 3 dates on it, and we don't know the details of what hours they want to run on those 3 days, but it seems pretty obvious that it's difficult to clear the kind of area that they need of vehicles unless you do it very early in the morning. So you're looking at potentially a Friday, Saturday, Sunday with multiple streets in your downtown core blocked off appears to be the request. But again, we don't have the details on the area or the hours.
Maybe somebody make a motion. We invite the Roaring Twenties Auto Club to...
That a little bit.
Go ahead.
I'm working on the committee with them because I can't help myself.
You haven't got enough to do.
The basic setup is that they're just, in all honesty, looking for an extension when it comes to the Saturday night into the Sunday morning. The Friday would be okay. So that's what they're looking for. We're talking about growing. They've reached a point that you can't grow much bigger with what you have. And so what they're looking to do is perhaps create a concert for the Saturday night, do something on the Friday night with the parade and that, but only close off the streets on the Saturday night and the Sunday. So that's what they're looking for specifically.
Think it'd still be a good idea for those guys to come in and make a presentation?
I think that would be fine.
Make that a motion, Councillor?
I'll make that a motion.
Moved by Councillor Cleveland, second by Councillor Barry. Any questions or comments?
I got a comment.
Your Worship.
I say we do everything we can to accommodate them.
Oh, guaranteed.
This is just exciting. Just keeps growing. I love it.
Look, we reach a point. Are we going to be a tourism destination? And you have to make these moves. You have to decide if you're going to do it. I think we need to. Very passionate.
Councillor Hood.
Well, I support all that. Is there anything we need to do to make sure the downtown merchants are aligned with what we're thinking here?
Your worship.
We could, I'm going to be facetious, you just advise them that the car show is their biggest day of the year, by far, from all reports, that it's crazy off the charts. But we would have to, we'd have to advise them.
Advise them, give them the
Yeah,
letter, give them
out of
the
respect.
schedules, give them the,
Yeah.
and I think with Councillor Cleveland being on the committee now, I think that's, with his ideas for detail and getting information out to the public, I think that's going to be well taken care of. Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Motion carried. Municipality of Yarmouth Doppler radar system. We've already sent our letter, CAO, I believe? Well, I think we're on the list that we have. I thought we did. I think I said Doppler in the last year over there.
So we reviewed that because we had received a letter from Shelburne on the same topic, and what appears to have happened is we had it on previously distributed correspondence at an earlier meeting, and I recall there was discussion about it. There was no motion to send a letter. That was, we sent one in 2015, so that might be where you recall, but if you want to send another letter, we can do that, but please make a motion and we'll follow your wish.
I think the letters to MP Colin Fraser and MLA Zach Churchill, and the request to the Minister of the Environment. I don't know why that is, but do we have a motion to send a letter to our MP and our MLAs? Moved by Councillor Berry, seconded by Your Worship. All those in favor? Aye. Contrary? Thank you. 9C, Councillor Hood, Chair of the Water Utility. Councillor Hood.
I've yacked enough tonight. Just take notice that at the regular meeting, I'll be giving some updates on the situation in Lake George, which frankly is improving on a number of fronts.
Good.
I've been busy. The engineer and I, David and I, were out there on Monday for best part of 4 hours, traipsing around the old fish hatchery and stuff with the feds, and the province didn't come, although invited. But we made some very good headway, I think, with the feds. It's something that probably going to cost us a lot less money on that project. I'm talking about the dam and the issue we have with them on that. And there's some other things coming up, so that's enough said for now.
I think it's prudent in the next month to have just a water utility meeting by itself.
I think we could combine that with when we have the Skype session on the 25th. Think so?
Good. Anything else?
We're receiving a report by way of Skype
Yes.
in relation to one of the issues.
Yeah.
And I think we should have a water utility meeting at that time. I can update you in committee at that time as to quite a bit of activity we had on the file.
Oh.
And there's stuff being typed in the office right now on the dime of Hood, Fraser, Dontamont.
We'll take a collection here later.
And I
right?
sometimes have to impose on the goodwill of the owners of the law firm who are not me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hood. I don't think there's any other additions, is there, Jeff? I don't think. Previously distributed? Oh, okay. Sorry, Your Worship, Mariner Center concert.
So I don't know where to go with this, but I was just thinking if there's a way we can write a letter to, Jeff and I, we discussed this briefly, a letter to the Mariner Center board. I don't know how it would work, but I would love to know if we can get more concerts and if the decisions can come to our tables. But I don't know logistically how it works.
Do you
When
know,
it comes, I guess when it comes to money,
Jeff, when are we having a tri-municipal meeting? Would that be something that we put on the table at that time?
that's a good idea. Okay, so, would you make note of that, Linda?
I think we
We're
can
gonna
get,
have the joint council meeting.
but it might not be the
We
one
won't
that,
have the joint other one.
the priority setting, I think what
Priorities.
her worship was looking for, but we'll have the other part. No other additions, motion to move in camera, and then we'll come back out afterwards and call a regular council meeting for the acceptance of the consolidated financial
Yeah,
statements.
we'll do that
So
now.
move, thank you.
Yeah, let's do that now.
Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I think there's the two things, we'll do two things, Jeff. One was the,
Oh,
to change the date of the meeting too, or no?
No, you have to do that at a regular meeting,
This is a regular meeting now.
regularly scheduled.
Regularly scheduled meeting, okay.
okay.
Your worship, you're gonna make a motion.
I will make a motion that we accept the
Consolidated financial
statements.
statements?
The auditor's report. Thank you.
Seconded. Question's been called. All those in favor? Aye. Councilor McLeod, what about reappointing of the auditors?
I move to reappoint the current auditors, Grant Thornton.
Moved and seconded. Question's been called. All those in favor?
Aye.
Contrary? Motion again to move in camera.
So moved.
Thank you. Oh, this is way fun. I can move now. This is way more